Well, hello. My name is Mike Deagon. Today I'm Corporal Deagon. Normally I'm the state park interpreter for Fort Tejon State Park, one of the California state parks. Today, just briefly, I want to tell you a little bit about Army life for the typical soldier in the 1850s and during the Gold Rush era out in this brand new state called California. Generally, we represent the year of 1856 here. The Army occupied Fort Tejon from 1854 to 1864. And I want to show you a little bit about what the typical soldier lived, how he lived, and what the Army was giving him to perform his job here beyond the frontier. Okay, some things in the Army do not change, and from Roman times till probably to modern times today, soldiers need a place to live while they're employed by the military, while they're working for the Army. And by one name or another, those are typically referred to as barracks. Okay, and in 1856, the Army had barracks being built for the soldiers. Okay, so I'm out on the one end of the parade ground of the fort, kind of the center of the Army fort, and on one of the edges of the parade ground is our Army barracks. There were two of them that the Army built. You'll see behind me these ruins here. That was one of the barracks. That was meant to house about a company of men. So a full company at full strength is 100 men plus their officers. The enlisted men, so not the officer, not the leader, the top leaders of the company would be housed in here, kind of in a communal fashion. The other barracks that we actually still have standing here, about 60% original, over 160 years old, is this barracks here. This is actually the first barracks they built. They arrived here in 1854 when the Army had designated this as a site where they wanted to found a military post near the San Sebastian Indian Reservation that was being built. California at this point, in 1854, was only 4 years old. And the Army shows up and they say, well, we need barracks for soldiers to stay in. So they built this one. And I want to show you some peculiar adaptations the Army was making to building barracks this far west. So come on over here. Now the Army said, well, my gosh, it costs an awful lot of money to build barracks with those red bricks that we're used to back east, or expensive processed lumber. So they found a cheap, locally made material and built in a similar architectural fashion as you might find back east, but with unique materials to the southwest here. And so you'll notice these are mostly made from adobe. There's slate granite for the foundation, cut from the hills right around here. And then you'll notice we also have processed lumber and timber. They invested for windows, glass, fairly expensive stuff. There's also wood framing for the roof and so on. But the walls of this building, the majority of this building is made of adobe, okay? And that's essentially, there's three basic main ingredients that you need for adobe. So you need soil, preferably with a fair amount of clay in it. You need a binding agent, usually some sort of biological matter like plant matter. Here, since they were getting it from they had a ready water source, it was typical grasses and plant matter you'll find in the soils around here, and then water to kind of make it malleable into a brick. And so if you take a look, these are original bricks. These are probably over 160 years old. They've been through all sorts of earthquakes and weather and treatment and so on. And you'll see, here's our soil, right? But then you'll also see in here bits of plant matter, which are probably from the local grasses and soils right around here, bits of rocks in here, and then they use kind of a sandy type of soil for mortar as well. And they would dry these. They would put these together in adobe pits, put them in forms. There's a standard size brick they would use, so their masons knew could make their job a little easier. And they would either dry these out in the sun, or they had kilns nearby here where they could cook them to the point where there's no more moisture, they're good and solid, you can build with them. And this particular barracks took about 60,000 of these. The laborers who were working at Fort Tejon almost the whole time it was open were being paid several cents for each of these, which actually was decent money, especially when one building is going to require 60,000 of these, right? So it's a cheap local material. They never plastered over these like you see some of the older Spanish adobes. This was actually only meant to be a temporary post anyway. So they said, well, the inside will plaster, make the living quarters nice, but the outside we're not going to worry about it so much. And so one of our tasks as a park system is constantly maintaining this uncovered adobe. But anyways, that's how the Army's adapting to making living barracks for its soldiers in the mid-1850s in this brand new state called California way beyond the frontier, beyond Illinois and Kentucky and Arkansas, on the other side of the continent. Okay, and I represent the 1st Regiment of the United States Dragoons, Company A in particular, right now in 1856. What I'd like to do is take you inside just briefly, show you kind of some of the basic living conditions of some of the soldiers here at Fort Tejon in 1856. So follow me. Now, the general rule of etiquette in Army etiquette at the time is you remove your hat when you walk indoors. I'm going to keep mine on for the sake of tradition, but I'm also under arms with the saber. So that requires me actually to keep the headwear on by Army etiquette of the time. So anyways, come on inside. So this is one of the main rooms of the barracks. This room is set up as close as we can tell to how soldiers probably lived in the 1850s in an Army barracks in California. Okay, and let me show you some of the items that soldiers, how a typical soldier kind of made his personal space in this communal atmosphere. So you might say each soldier under one of these shelves here, we might have 3 to 4 soldiers. Each man had, as far as we could tell, they didn't have any bunks set up in the Army barracks like you might expect to see in Army barracks today. But there was a regulation mattress tick that the Army had, so we think they probably might have been using those until, if ever, the bunks were supposed to be built. And this is a canvas material filled with straw, nice and squishy, and it's meant to be rolled out. Let me show you right here. So you might roll this out, and then you're going to make it comfortable, kind of like a dog will move around on their mattress a little bit. And you can kind of make it squishy and fit to you. And then the Army will also provide you with a blanket, standard Army blanket, model 1851. Normally these would be embroidered with US on it, has the gray stripe. This is your personal item to keep you warm at night. And then you might also hang your personal items. So you have your shirt, your greatcoat, you might have your jacket, your canteen, your shoes, your hat. Remember, there are no electrical sockets in here in 1856. And so your light is coming from candles in the fireplace. So you're going to have hopefully a candle nearby so you can kind of see what you're doing in the darker hours. And any other personal items you might want to keep here. Okay? So this is kind of your personal space, and you're sharing this with your squad, your platoon, and the company that's been packed into this barracks. Okay? And you can see we have several lying down along the way. You might also notice the thickness of our windows, right? That's a kind of an indication of how thick these walls are. In the summer, when we walk in here, in the height of the summer, it's probably 10 to 15, sometimes 20 degrees cooler in here, just because of the insulation, the thickness of the insulation of the adobe. And in the winter, when we've got the doors closed, windows are closed, and you've got the heat, the fireplace going, bunch of bodies in here, that 2.5 foot thick wall will act as a great insulation here, okay? Now remember, in the barracks, the soldiers can kind of let up a little bit. This is your free space, this is your time to relax. So you can imagine at this table, all sorts of things might be going on. Discussions, reading, writing letters home, games, entertain the soldiers. We have our card called checkers, for example. Company A had a notorious poker game going on that lasted for years. It would stop when they left the location, continue when they found their new posting, and stop when they left that posting until they got to the next location. So I will bet that there were some probably pretty competitive moments and a certain amount of pay gained and lost in these barracks, believe it or not. And of course, remember, no electricity. So here is not only your light at night, but also your warmth. Now, granted, you have a lot of bodies sleeping in here as well. All that kind of combines to make a pretty comfortable space, even when we have, minus temperatures here in the winter. Okay. Come on around this way. So more of the same. Oh, I forgot to mention, foot lockers. Some things don't change with the Army. Soldiers typically have their own foot lockers. Sometimes they would be stacked in here, sometimes they'd be in storage. This is a good example of the style of foot locker you might find in the barracks in the mid-1850s. and that's where a soldier can keep a lot of his personal items, extra uniform items, and so on. When the company moves, those are typically packed up on the company wagons and moved out. And you can see right there, something unique to the Dragoons, since they were trained primarily as mounted soldiers, was the spurs, horseman's equipment. And of course, one of the worst pieces of headwear probably the Army ever designed, the old shako, modeled after the French Army. Very impractical in the field, but such was the what was being issued in the mid-1850s, almost up to the Civil War. And then down here ways, more footlockers, of course, and weapons racks. Remember, so normally we'd have our musketoons stacked in here. I think we only have one on display at the moment. You might have the company's weapons set in here in case an emergency is called by the guards. You also have, we have them on display as well. A lot of these would also be contained over in the ordnance department across the other side of the parade grounds. And then the sabers, so that every Dragoon was trained to fight with. If no other weapon was functioning, every Dragoon was trained to fight with his sabers, a mounted soldier. And so we have 3 different models here. For example, the 1833 Terrible Saber. It gives way to the model 1840, the one I'm wearing. That's in service for quite some time. And then its predecessor, a slight variation of it to make it a little more efficient, the model 1860. And at some point, all 3 of these sabers, by different units, came through these barracks, along with the notorious 1847 musketoon, very inaccurate. Good luck hitting the broadside of a barn at 50 yards. Now, coming on through here, this barracks has several rooms. There's actually 4 rooms in this barracks. There's 2 of them this size where you could imagine most of the soldiers staying, and there's 2 inner rooms as well. We've set up this in room to be the first sergeant's room. And the first sergeant is kind of the senior enlisted man in this company. Come on inside. So of course the first sergeant being NCO has the crimson sash, and also the lozenge on his 3 stripes. And he's kind of the head guy, the head enlisted guy in the company. He's usually a career man. He's been in for quite some time. He's trusted by the captain. In a fight, he's sometimes the captain's right-hand man. And you'll notice that his room, his quarters, are not far, basically a doorway away from the main room to the barracks. So he's the guy who, at the end of the day, is going to maintain the discipline of the company, and the captain's going to come to for a lot of administrative matters. He's kind of the go-between the officers and the body of the enlisted men. And because he was kind of the senior enlisted man, rank has its privileges. Some things don't change with the Army. And he was typically a crewman. They would often have wives or allowed to have wives. And so he'd given his own quarters, something like this, to be able to make Army life a little more palatable. We also have on display, because this is also technically a museum in the state park system, we have on display items like the Grimsley saddle, which was the typical issue at the time for the military. The valise should be actually back here. Very big, heavy saddle, meant to keep you in the saddle in a fight. He would have been very experienced with this, along with all these men. And again, his own fireplace for lighting and heat. You can also see the company colors entrusted to the first sergeant. Made of silk, Company A. Some things don't change in the Army. This is still the same style of ceremonial colors that mounted services have today in the Army. Each company had their own guide, they call it a guide on, literally because the company will guide on it in the middle of a battle. So, hopefully that gives you kind of an overview of the first sergeant's quarters. I hope you guys will come and visit us. There's lots of stuff. Everything you see on here, I should mention too, it's a display item. It's kind of a museum, but this is also something that everything is usable. We bring public in, kids all the time. So you please come and join us sometime when we open back up, and we'll show you around. Thanks for visiting.